like you're, whether you're a freshman or you're a senior or whoever you are, Anton. Whether you're a freshman or you're a senior or first time here. How many is your first time here? Raise your hand. It's really high real fast. Can I get a little more house spots? Hey, well, if you have not had a chance to meet me, my name is Brent Isbell. I'm the high school pastor. And man, we're super stoked that you're here. We're in the second week of a series called Walking Away. We said, hey, last week, if there's anything that all of us in the room, whether we're in the back on the couch, or whether we're up front on the couch, or whether we're in somewhere in the middle, all of us in the room, we're prone to do one thing, and that's usually walk away from the Lord, or really walk away from what He wants in our life. But we said the great thing last week was, the good thing is though we're prone to wander from God, and we tend to all get off track, is that we serve a God and love God, hopefully, of second chances. And so last week we said, hey, we serve a God of second chances. And this was really awesome demonstrated in the life of Peter, where Peter denies Jesus 3 times. He's like, Jesus, I'll die with you. And he's like, I don't even know who you are. And then we see Jesus go to the cross, and He dies on the cross and takes on sin. He raises from the dead and ultimately does exactly what He says. He's going to go ahead to Galilee. He's going to meet His disciples. He sees them on the beach, and He restores Peter on the beach, on the seashore. And the incredible thing for us is to go, just as God restored Peter, God offers that same restoration to all of us, and those second chances. And we said tonight, if there's anything else we also struggle with in this room, is doubt. If there's something that you struggle with, something I struggle with, a lot of us in this room, we struggle with doubt. In fact, how many of you have ever doubted something in your life? By show of hands. All right, how many of you, by show of hands, have ever doubted something when it comes to your faith? You've been kind of freaked out about something. See, I think that's something we all would say, whether this is the first time we've been here a million times, or whether we just kind of wandered in and you're like, what in the world's going on? All of us have really probably struggled with doubt when it comes to God, if we're honest. If you say that you haven't, you're a liar. And you struggle with lying. But I think about if there's one area in our life that has the potential to sink us spiritually, at times, is doubt. I think it just can suck the life out of us. It can put us in a spot where God just doesn't want us. And so tonight, if you're a note taker, the bottom line, or I'm just going to say the great news for us, is that God's okay with you now. See, if you showed up tonight and you go, Brent, my parents are going through a divorce, my grandmother's got cancer, or my boyfriend just dumped me and he's totally been a punk and used me the last year. I don't know what you've been walking through. I don't know what's going on. You might have everything going on the good, but I know there's a lot of us in this room, if we walk in, if we're truly honest, everybody's high-fiving and having a good time. And it took a lot for you just to even come into the room, because you're carrying a lot of stuff. And you're really coming into the room with a lot of doubt, going, God, are you really who you say you are? And I think the tension that causes all this, the tension that you live with, that I live with, is that when it comes to our faith, we're far more susceptible to walk away from God than we are to walk away from anything else in life. See, this is what I know. How many of you have ridden a bike in your life? Yeah, hands go up again. How many of you, the first time you rode that bike, you busted your tail, did a face plant? And your parents are like, see these days, when you fell, nothing happened to you. Because your parents put a big old helmet on you, and elbow pads, and knee pads. I see kids riding around, and they're like, my kids ride around, and they don't wear helmets. They're like, it's the law. And I'm like, it is stupid. I'm like, you're just creating wusses. I'm like, seriously? We're going to put all these helmets on them and say, don't climb a tree. Mary's back there. She's one of the helicopter parents. They're freaking out. She's like, Mason, you got tissue on your pants? Because I don't want you to get hurt. And seriously, I'm going, I remember the first time my dad literally got me on a bike, and he got me on our driveway was epic. It was straight down, so when it snowed in Georgia, we would fly down it and shoot in the air. We used to get our big wheels out when we were little, and we would line up Christmas trees, because we'd see Christmas trees at the lake, because fish go around Christmas trees. So we would go around and get everybody's Christmas trees. Well, we'd line them up in a row, and we would fly down the driveway in a big wheel, and boom, and hit the jump, and see how many Christmas trees we could clear. But I remember the first time I was riding a bike. Yes, I was redneck before redneck school. And so I remember my dad holding me on my bike. And I remember on this, he goes, all right, you ready? And he lets go. And he's like, all right, you go. And I'm like, once I get past the concrete, I'm in grass. And eventually, what do? You either make it to the woods and hit a tree, or you fall somewhere along the lines. But I remember the whole process of doing that. It was scary, but I remember going, just because I fell, I remember some of the first times riding a skateboard or riding a bike, would eat it like on a ramp, or I remember one time I jumped, literally, I took every piece of skin from my hiney all the way down to my ankle, off my leg from sliding. I have bone missing from my face right here, from a baseball bat hitting me in a game of baseball in a neighborhood. I was excited being hyper 88, so if there's a rabbit, oh, there's a bat, bam, right in my face. And so I have had a lot of injuries. I jumped out of a tree one time and got a pop gun right in my face. One time I was running around the house with strobe lights when I was in middle school, ran through a couch, cut all the hole all the way through my, I've had stitches in my face more times than I can ever count. When I was an intern in Atlanta, I took a plastic flute recorder. You know those things? This little kid named Ethan, now he's a senior in high school. He goes, right then he had a speech impediment. He goes, Mr. Brent, he goes, throw me a ball and knock your head off. And so I faked threw a ball, and he swung the flute recorder, and the end shot out and went right in my forehead. He literally knocked my head off. And I was like, oh God, so I think he cracked my skull. He almost did. There was blood everywhere. But I thought, all those things that happened to me, you're going, why is he telling us these weird stories? All those things. Like I think about Caitlin breaking her leg, or I think about Mackenzie today, who I went and prayed with at the hospital, who tore her ACL out. This is what I know. Mackenzie's not quitting volleyball, and you're not quitting cheerleading. Why? Because there's something within you that likes to do that loves it. And I think that the reason you got back on a bike, and the reason I got back up when I fell and I was bleeding, the reason we got back up, and the first time you went to baseball and you took a ground ball to the face, and you didn't go, I don't think I'm ever playing middle infield. No, you suck it up and you do it. Why? Because you love it, because there's something within you that drives you to be better, that wants to do something exciting with your life. And I think there's this one area in our life where we tend to just cop out and wuss out and like just kind of be passive. It's when it's following Jesus. And I think where God goes, but I think it's tangible. I remember in high school, there was one class I hated more than anything. It was 1 hour of the day I hated. My junior year, I had chemistry. I hated chemistry. It was like a nightmare. I was terrible at it. I have a learning disability, so I would literally take my test orally with my teacher, and I hated the class. I thought I'm never going to pass this class. But there was this fear within me, as much as I doubted I could pass it, going, if you don't pass this class, you don't graduate next year. And I was like, I've got to pass her. I got to go to summer school. And I didn't want to go to summer school because I never failed anything. And I was like, all right, this is not good. But I remember studying. I remember going, there was lots of doubt. I remember waiting to find out what my final exam would be. And my teacher telling me, you made a D, you got a C in the class. I was like, yes. And I remember going, all I have to do is make a 25 to pass. I'm like, somebody was like, what are you talking about? I'll make all the A's and B's. But I remember just being gripped with fear, but I think there was something within me that kept pushing on. And I think about, if I could go on and go, how many of you have ever wakeboarded? If you've ever played a sport, if you've ever done anything in your life, you know that the first time you do something, you're not a pro. You're not like doing a backflip off the Mastercraft the first time out. If you do, it's not on purpose. It's like something went epically wrong, and like you were in the hospital, zipped up like this. I did a flip and had a turn. It's bad. But I think all of us in life, if we're really honest, when it comes to our faith, because there's not some initial consequence that we can necessarily measure or see, you don't walk at graduation, you don't do this, we tend to just chicken out and cop out. So what do you do when you can't figure your faith out? What do you do when all this following Jesus stuff doesn't work? What do you do when you pray for your grandmother every single day and she dies? What do you do when you pray every day that your parents' divorce doesn't happen and they still get a divorce? What do you do when you've been in this relationship and you know it's gone too far and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do and it just goes south and you're just left with a mess? Because that's not in that moment, it's not the church answer that Jesus, he's the answer. But he is the answer. In those moments, it's going to be like when you're on the baseball field and you take a ball off your chest, or if you know, or whatever you're doing, and you're going, man, I need to suck it up and not be driven by my doubt and by my fear. And God looks at us and goes, consequently, because some of you begin to doubt that how could this good God allow these bad things to happen to me? If God was good, why would He even allow this stuff to go on me? And if we're not careful, all these negative thoughts really begin to shape and drive what we believe and how we live our lives. And the point of today's talk is not to go, you know, Lacey, I don't ever want you to have doubt. The point of today's talk to go and say, how do we balance the tension of doubt? Because whether you're Lacey or whether you're Stacey Dickey in the back, or whether you're Travis or whether you're Eddie or whether you're me, you're going to have doubt. But how you manage the tension of that doubt is going to make all the difference in the world. And tonight what we're going to do is we're going to look at the life of Peter again. And we're going to stare at his life, and we're going to look at what Scripture says. And let's look at how it powerfully illustrates of how doubt, how fear really robbed Peter of an experience. To set the stage kind of what's going on. Jesus has been on the scene. He's been teaching. He shows up. This huge crowd comes. They're like, hey, Jesus, it's getting late. You need to send them away. And Jesus looks at them and says, no, you feed them. And so imagine if we had all of us, and all of a sudden outside the door there was 5,000 people outside, 5,000 men, plus women and children. And I said, hey guys, you know what? I know y'all were coming to church thinking you're going to get to hang out with your buddies and sing some songs and maybe hear Brent talk. But what you're really going to do tonight is, you know what, there's a kitchen in there, and there's just a little bit of stuff left. But we got 5,000 people out there, and they haven't eaten all day, and you know what, we need to go out there and feed them. You'd be like, there would be people running out the side doors, going out, and be like, yeah, better luck, good luck with that, Brent. And Jesus looks at his disciples, and they're like, hey, send them, this is what you'd say, Brent, there's Whataburger right down the street, there's Chick-fil-A, there's 2 Rivers, or whatever. And Jesus looks right back at them. He looks at 2 Rivers. So she works at 2 Rivers now, so she's like going to the sign for 2 Rivers. And so but we have Jesus looking back at his disciples. And he says, you tell them, you feed them. And it's like, all we got, Jesus, is 5 loaves and 2 fish. And Jesus goes, fine, bring it to me. And he feeds 5,000 men, plus women and children. And then he gets his disciples, and they gather the stuff, and he puts them in a boat, and he sends them on. He says, you go ahead, and I'll catch up with you later. And it's the fourth watch of the night, which basically means it's probably around 6 a.m. Some people say it's between 3 and 6 a.m. And if they've been outside and they're not making it where they are, the weather is bad, it's stormy, it's winds are being rocked around this boat, and all of a sudden, if you imagine you're sitting on a boat, you're out at Canyon Lake, you're on the lake, and maybe you're on like a little John boat fishing, and all of a sudden, it's almost daylight, and you see some dude walking on the water. And immediately you're going, either I ate something really bad last night, or that's a ghost. I mean, I'm freaking out. And they're freaking out. And then they begin to rip with fear and freaking out and screaming, is it Jesus? And that's what brings us to this part of the story that we have. So if you have your Bibles, or you have your flat screens, or your iPhones, or whatever you brought with you today, you can flip with me, turn with me, transport yourself to Matthew chapter 14, verses 25. It says, during the 4th watch of the night, so we're just going to say 6 a.m. in the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. And when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. Same as would be with you, same as would be me. We'd be freaking out. We'd be in the fetal position. And so they're freaking out, they're feared. But Jesus immediately said to them, he says, take courage. He said, it is I. Do not be afraid. I find it interesting, every time someone says an angel, they see Jesus, they're afraid. And he says, don't be afraid. And they said, Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come out on the water to you. And he said, come, he said. Can we just pause here for a minute? Okay, I don't know about you, but if I've just watched like Pastor Ray feed 5,000 people with like a can of Spam and like some goldfish, And he's like coming out, and like I'm hanging out with like Pastor Brandon, and we're on a boat, and I see Ray walking and going, "Hey, Brent." I'm like, "Ray, is that you? If it is, say yeah." And he says, "Yeah, I can tell you what I'm doing. I'm jumping out of the boat and running, because this is what I know. If that dude is asked, if I watched him do all this and he's doing this, I know my personality. I'm thinking, I want to get on this action. I'm out the boat. I'm running to the dude. I'm not waiting. I'm like the first one over. I'm going, I'm in this." And this is what I know about a lot of you. We think, oh, what was Peter thinking? No, here's the deal. You would jump out of the boat. Most of you, I know you. I've seen you. You've been in my house. I've watched you run chasing my kids around. You would be jumping out of the boat. And this is why. Because this is how I've seen in your own life. You've been to New Orleans, or you've been to Seattle, or you've been to Haiti, or you've been to this place, or you've gone to Believe Weekend, or you had a quiet time. And God started showing off. And then He began to speak deep into your heart of what He wanted for your life. And this is what happened. Some of you began to jump out of the boat and run. It's the reason Madison later went last year. She goes to the whole leadership summit with me, and she comes back and goes, "God's saying to me, I can't just not do anything with my life. I got to do something." So what does she do? She does the Bike Back campaign. And so now 800 people as of last year. Was it 800 or is it 80 we did? Huh? True. So 800 people in another country tonight are going to go to bed. And they're not... No, it was 80 people, 80 families, and not 800. 80, I was right. It was $800 we raised. 80 people. 2,500. So that would be 250 people. So 250 people tonight are going to go to bed. And you know what their biggest fear is? Sumner, like let's say Sumner, if you were living in Africa and you go to sleep, you know, your worst fear is like maybe your hair straightener's not working in the morning. That would be bad. But the worst fear for them is this. Is what Ashlyn's worst fear was when she was in Guatemala. And she was going to get bit by mosquitoes, and she was going to get malaria. And so now, because someone in this room goes, you know what, I don't need to just be a high school student. I need to do something with my life that matters. 250 people are going to go to sleep tonight. And really it's 250 families. And so most of these nets, they have multiple people that can sleep under them. So it's really a lot more than that. So it's probably around 700 people. 700 people tonight because of one girl said, I'm not going to settle for the status quo. And I'm not saying she's perfect. I know she's not that. But I do know this. I go, when someone goes, I'm not going to sit on the side and be apathetic and do anything. I want to do something with my life. God begins to show up. And so 700 or so people tonight are going to go to bed. And you know what they're not worried about? If I'm going to have malaria tomorrow when I wake up. And you know what? Those 700 people, they deserve to go to bed. Not worried about that. It's just as much as you do. And I think God begins to look at you and go, what in the world are you doing with your life? Are you doing something that matters? Are you just going to just be happy to exist? And this is what I know. God is working in some of your hearts. I watched the baptism video of these girls and these guys that got baptized this week a ton of times already. You know, and I just watch it and I'm just like fired up. And I'm excited. I'm going to probably get baptized. Jalen now on Sunday. After church, we're gonna go because she didn't get to do the river. She wanted to do the river. So after church, Rusty's approved it. So we're going to get her friends and some people. We're going to go to the river after church. And we're going to baptize her and maybe one of her friends. And I'm pumped. And to me, I go, you know, I had Ashton Estrada and Audra saw me at Chick-fil-A the other day. It was super cool. And they were helping out going to Chick-fil-A. I saw a bunch of y'all came out. And I really appreciate that. Our friends are adopted from Africa. And if someone would grab me a water, that would be super cool. But they're adopted from Africa. And they showed up and they said, hey, you know what today is? I said, what's today? I was thinking, well, they're helping out for Africa. I said, no, because a year ago you baptized us. And I was like, that's right, I did. That's super, super cool that you would remember that. And then a little bit later on Instagram, I see Ashton put a picture up of saying, man, best decision I ever made. And later that night, I'm over at James Mock hanging out with him at his house. And all of a sudden, I got a text from Mallory Cooper says, hey, a year ago, you baptized me. Just want to say I love you. I want to say thank you. Love you and Edmund. And I go, man, when God gets a hold of our heart, when God starts doing something in our life, and it's not none of us are perfect. And I'm not perfect. But when God starts getting a hold of your life, and starts doing something special in your life, this is what I know. It makes a difference. You're willing to get out of the boat. God begins to do things, and this isn't like me being weird, but I told Ashley this, so she can smack me if I don't have permission to say this, but I'm excited. I'm doing her dad's wedding coming up. And I said, how awesome is this? A year ago, you didn't even want your dad to be at your baptism service. She couldn't stand him. And she lives with him now, guys. And I'm going, when we begin to let God work and what we do, God begins to do the supernatural. It's incredible. And I come back after the picnic, and our dad, Eric, he asked me that, and I come back from that going, are you kidding me, God? I get to do this for a living. I get paid to do this. Are you kidding me? I get paid to love on families and walk them through stuff. I'm like, we should all be doing this. Whether you work at, no matter what you're doing. And I think Jesus looks at you and he looks at me and he begins to ask these questions. And he said, you're going to come. And I think all of us, truthfully, we want to get out of that boat. We want to run. We want to do the exciting. We don't want to sit in the boat. Peter got down out of the boat and he walked on the water in verses 29. And he came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, which I find weird, I'm like, how do you see wind? Obviously, it was storming because the wind had water, it had stuff, it had things going on. And he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, Lord, save me. And this is the part of the story that gets real for me. It should get real for you. It should come alive. You see, Peter got out of the boat and he started walking to Jesus. Now, there's one small problem. He's in the middle of a storm. And storms are intimidating. And storms are scary. And storms are unpredictable. There's two things that we know be true that we can learn from this passage. And the first is this. There are going to be storms following Jesus. There's going to be storms. Life's going to throw you a curveball. Life's going to throw you a broken leg. Life's going to throw you cancer. Life's going to throw you a wreck and a total car. And life's going to throw you, your parent losing a job. Life's going to throw you chaos. But the beautiful thing about this is in the midst of the storm, is Jesus never goes anywhere in the story, guys. Despite the storm, Jesus never goes anywhere. He's in the same place where he called out Jesus, where he called out to Peter. See, if it wasn't until Peter took his eyes off Jesus that he began to sink. This is what's crazy, guys. When Peter stepped out of the storm, when Peter stepped out of the boat, it was crazy already. When he stepped out of the boat and began to go, it wasn't like, oh, it was all calm. No, it was a storm. It was like crazy outside. And I remember the first time I heard Marco Stryker talking about this, he was like, man, if you could imagine, how many of you have ever been like out on the water, like in the ocean or somewhere, and waves are going like this? You ever been like on that? Could you imagine walking on that? I mean, that would be crazy. Walking on like Lake McQueen at 7 o'clock or at night when it's blast, that'd be one thing. But walking on the ocean, walking on the sea where it's like this, are you kidding me? He's stepping out of a boat into like white, coming over, wind and stuff. And he's walking to Jesus. And it's like he didn't know what he was getting into. But then once he takes his eyes off of Jesus, once he begins to not focus on Christ, he begins to sink. And that's where things went south for him. And you know why? It's because doubt began to creep in his mind. So how did Jesus respond to Peter? He let him drown, didn't he? He's like, peace out, brother. No. What do you do? Scripture says immediately. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. And he said, you have little faith. And why did you doubt? He didn't scream at him. I think Jesus was brokenhearted. Like the other day, I won't tell you what he did, just because I don't want to embarrass him, but Eli is probably one of the most, in our house, we have some rambunctious kids at times, but Eli is like, he's a rule follower, and he's good natured. He's just not a mean kid. But he did something really mean to a kid the other day that was so out of character at Chick-fil-A to a kid. So bad that I had parents come over and tell me what my son had done to them. And I was like, if you would have said Isaiah, I'd be like, yeah, that was a big surprise. But I'm like, and I was like, but I remember driving over to James's house that night and thinking, God, am I failing as a parent? Am I a horrible dad? I mean, because I'm like, my son was a bully tonight to an older kid. And that's not cool with me. I want my son to have tough skin for the world, but I want him to have a heart that's soft for the things of the world. If my son's going to break someone's nose, I want him to break someone's nose that's picking on someone that's littler than them or has something wrong with them. I want him to stand up for what's right, not be a bully. Because he's not going to hear ever in my house that that's a man. And I remember just being so disappointed. And so sad that I had plans that night. In a sense, I was glad I had something to do, but I was like, I wanted just to be able to sit down with him. And the thing with Evie, she sat down and we talked, and we really got to the root of the story. And you know, one of the things he said, which made me really happy, is like, I'm just so disappointed in myself. I'm ashamed of how I act. And to me, that's a win as a parent. Going, okay, I'm glad you're disappointed. I'm glad you're ashamed, because you should be ashamed of the way you acted. But I don't see Jesus screaming in this picture, like, what in the world's wrong with you, Peter? I think he's going, Peter, why did you doubt? When have I ever let you down? When have I ever given you any reason to think that? And maybe you can relate. I know I can. And you've said yes to Jesus. I'm going to follow you. For those that just got baptized, I think about this. I think some of y'all got baptized, and maybe you've given your life to Christ in middle school or 5th grade. And there was a time in your life, man, you said yes to Jesus. You said yes to Jesus in the gospel about something. You said yes this summer in a quiet time. And man, you're walking with the Lord, and all of a sudden, man, you're like in the middle of the storm, and you're in the middle of the pressure, and all of a sudden, man, you start paying attention to what's going on. And you take your eyes off Jesus. Fear creeps in. And it's destructive, guys. Because it robs you of what God wants for your life. It robs you of the joy of knowing Him and what He wants for your life. And I think what's crazy is most of us in the room, when we think about taking our eyes off Jesus and walking away, we think about weed, alcohol, and sex and stuff. Here's the problem, guys. There's a lot of you that are sinking in this room, and you're walking towards Jesus. Let me say that again. There's a lot of you in the room, you're walking towards Jesus, and you're sinking, and you have no clue. See, you're living a moral life. You're not at the party. You're not doing anything bad. But Jesus is telling you in your heart of hearts that you need to be invested in people's lives. That you need to be speaking into the brokenness of your friends. You need to be sharing Christ with people that you know don't have a relationship. And you begin to see not just the storm, because there's no storm going on in your school, but you see the storm of the climate in your school that doesn't encourage, the godly things, and it doesn't encourage talking about Jesus. It's not cool to talk about Jesus at school if you're hanging out with the normal people at school. Let's just be honest. Let's not bullcrap everybody in the room and go, oh, it's really cool. No, it might be cool with your lunch table, but for the most part in New Braunfels High School or Canyon High School, it is not cool to talk about Jesus. And so if you don't feel that tension, you're not around people that are lost. And there's got to always be this tension going on in your life that's always pulling you to want to take your eyes off Jesus. And Jesus goes, it's not enough to walk towards me. I want your eyes focused on me. Because this is what I know. When your eyes are focused on something else, you're going to walk to that. See, we can start out walking to Jesus, but the moment we start taking our eyes off, the moment we start listening to lies, the moment we start listening to fear, we begin to let the devil win in our lives. And some of you, the worst mistake that you ever made in high school is not going to be that you went out partying. It's that you never shared Christ with your friends that don't know the Lord. And basically what you said is you can just go to hell. And that's a terrible friend. And you should never be that kind of friend. We should want to walk in a dark world as people of light. We should want to speak life into people's souls. We should want to put our hands on people that are broken and hurting and want to pray for them. This little girl comes up, and this little boy comes up to the head chief like coming out. He's in a wheelchair. And kids are funny about stuff. And Mackenzie's like, I know him. He's in my school. Da, 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 da. And I just go, and I'm like, Lord, I pray that she stays this way always. That she doesn't look at people differently. That she doesn't treat people differently. She's not worried about what people are saying, but that she would walk into people's lives and speak that you matter. And the great news for you and the great news for me is that despite Peter took his eyes off Jesus, despite some of us in this room who've taken our eyes off Jesus, Jesus hasn't gone anywhere, guys. And in the moment that Peter cried out to him, it says immediately he reached for him. And some of you, that's the best thing you could do tonight. Is not beat yourself up. But realize that Jesus is going, hey, I know you made this commitment. I know you messed up. I know you're scared. But I haven't gone anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. And you know that feeling like you want to share me with your friends? He goes, that's from me. He goes, but if you think you love them, he goes, man, how much do you think I love them? I created them. And he goes, and why do you think I put you next door to them over in Oak Run? Or whatever it is, those neighborhoods or whatever it is. Why do you think he put you beside him? I go, why did God put me beside Katie and Dove Crossing? Obviously because God wanted a relationship with her. And I go, here we have someone who goes from like this little kid catching frogs in my front yard to someone who's leading worship in the student ministry, leading our children's ministry. Brought a brother to church on Sunday. And I go, guys, there's going to be fear. You're going to wrestle with that. And Jesus is cool with that. But what he says tonight is he goes, man, are you going to trust me? And the question I want you to ask yourself tonight is, am I going to let fear sabotage my faith? And it wasn't that Peter just doubted. Peter took his eyes off Jesus. You see, Jesus is okay with your doubt. He's okay with my doubt. Jesus is okay with you being scared. I mean, let's be honest. Every one of us in this room worries about what people think about us. I don't care who you are. All of us worry about that. It's the reason we get up and put deodorant on. I mean, if we didn't care what people thought, we just all walk around stinking. But the reason we take baths and showers, we have all these reasons why we have certain clothing stores and things, we care what people think. So the truth is the fear is there. Let's be honest in the room about the fear. And I think we land here tonight with this. It's the one thing that I want you to write down. So if you have a smartphone or something, I want you to write this out. Or you have a notepad, I want you to write this out. I want you to write, Jesus is okay with my doubt. So if you have a phone and you don't have it out, get it out. Jesus is okay with my doubt as long as I keep my eyes on him. You need to put that somewhere in your room this week. You need to put it up on Facebook. You need to put it on Instagram. You need to put it somewhere that you're going to see it all week. Jesus is okay with my doubt as long as I keep my eyes on him. Because here's what I know. Walking into school tomorrow, it's still not going to be cool to talk about Jesus. But this is what I know. There's someone in your third period class who's going to hell right now, and you've known them since kindergarten, and it's about time you start stepping out and walking the walk and actually investing in their lives. And you go, well, Brent, I'm scared. What are they going to think? I'm some weird. No, seriously. When you came to know the Lord, okay, so who's like a freshman? You guys are freshmen. I sat with you guys the other day. I sat with y'all at the Gauntlet for the first time. So I'm sitting with you. Did I ever once turn open the Bible, like, well, it says in 1 Corinthians this, or did I try to hit you over the head with the Bible? No, I asked you what your name was. I started asking you questions. I wanted to get to know you. Why? Well, here's the thing. You're friends. They're your friends because you know stuff about their lives. The reason, Randy, the reason you have friends, the reason, Anton, you have friends, or, Kirby, you have friends, is because you've asked them questions. You know things about their life. So you know how they're wired. You know that home life for some of your friends sucks right now. And here's the clue, guys. Some of them are going, we've been friends since kindergarten. You go to church every week. My house is a disaster. And you've never once ever asked me, can you pray for me? And how hard would it be one week to walk down to someone at Zoe, right? Yeah, so if I met Zoe, she just moved here recently, right? So I started asking her things and said, hey, if there's anything I can pray for you about, what would you say? If that would freak you out, you'd be like, yeah, you probably think of something. I've never had anyone I sit down beside going, yeah, no, that would be totally bad. I would really not want you to pray for me. In fact, I would want you to do just the opposite. I pray you pray curses on me. No one would do that. We would say yes. Now, it'd be weird if I just walked up to some stranger in the grocery store like, hi, I'm Brent. Can I pray for you? Security on aisle 4, security on aisle 4. I'll be like, crazy life special. That would be weird. But this is what I know. Some of you know that you're you got a family member with cancer that's in a different state. Why don't you call them on the way home tonight? And you go, hey, I just wanted to pray with you. Can I do that? Some of you, you just been a jerk to your mom or dad today. Instead of saying I'm right or I'm wrong, some of you, you know what you need to walk? You need to walk in the house and say, you know what? I'm sorry. The way I talked to you did not honor the Lord. If your parents are Christians and you're a Christian and you want to reach them, you think you're going to ever reach them by dishonoring them? No. You're going to reach them by honoring and loving them and treating them and acting the way Jesus would act. And I want you to put down, I want you to write it. Jesus is okay with my down as long as I keep my eyes on Him. Because, guys, what you look at, it's going to determine the direction of your life. And if I'm always looking at popularity, and I'm always looking at trying to be cool, I'm never going to be looking at Jesus. Because Jesus always promised me suffering, suffering, and suffering. But He also promised me joy in it. And I can't tell you other than you have to live it to experience it, to know what I'm talking about. It's the reason when I go to Haiti and you look at these kids who have nothing, but in their eyes, their souls say, I have everything. It's because they have found the one true Jesus, the Christ, the Son of the living God. And their hope is not in an iPad or in a car or some boy. Their hope is in the eternal God, the Christ. So I don't know where you are tonight, what you walk in here with, but I recognize this, and we'll wrap it up here. I recognize that here it's safe, it's calm. But for some of you, the moment you walk out of here to yelling, to where the heck have you been? For some of you, you walk back into the pressures of popularity or whatever it is. Now I recognize that a lot of us, every one of us in the room, look here, and we're done. God's looking at every one of you and He's saying, well, you get out of the boat. And you're going, there's a storm out there. It's going to be scary. But all I'm asking for you is, I'm not asking you not to doubt. I'm not asking you not to be scared. I'm just asking you to keep your eyes on me and walk towards me. And trust me. When we get overwhelmed, that we would have the ability to cry out to Him. And we would see that immediately He would step in and love on us. So God, we ask tonight, we ask that as Peter jumped out of the boat and started following you, that God, we would do just that. Lord, I pray tonight as we get a small group, God, you would give us the abilities to share. Pray if someone's new tonight, they don't know where they're going, they'd come find me. Pray small group leaders would, God, be transparent, be honest, be loving. And I pray your Spirit be at work in all of our lives. And we love you, Jesus.